2012 Honda Civic. I'm gonna be replacing some of the coolant in the radiator. And to be clear, this is not a complete flush, it's just changing the coolant. I usually do this every 30,000 miles or every 5 years, just so that I don't have to flush all that coolant out of the car. Make sure that this car has been sitting here for about at least 2 hours, so that you don't burn yourself. This radiator cap, and what you do is when you look to the left of the radiator cap, if you look all the way down there, right where my finger is, right under this fan, you'll see a little white cap. Let me see if you can see it here. Yeah, you might be able to see it right over there, right where my finger is pointing right there. Now I'm under the car, and the front of the car is facing that way. And these are my cooling fans, right? So if you look over this bar right here and towards the left a little bit, this is what I'm talking about. That is the drain bolt that we have for that radiator coolant. What I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna try to unscrew it by hand, and it's not gonna work for me, unfortunately. So I'm gonna have to use a plier. Now try to get a short plier because there's not much space to move in here. I got the catch pan here. Make sure that it's clean because we're gonna try to recycle this, basically take it back to a recycling center, and I don't want to contaminate it with like oil or anything like that. So just make sure that everything is clean, and then drain the coolant in here. So now I'm gonna take it, put it right under the car. You want to put it so the drain plug is actually, that's the back of the car. So the drain plug is somewhere up here, right over here. See that area there, circular? That's where the drain bolt is. So that's a drain plug. I believe I loosened it up. Trying to see if I can turn it by hand. It's still tight. So I'm gonna grab pliers. I reached in, I think I turned it a little bit, so I'm gonna try it again by hand. There it is. So now it should be loose. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to adjust my catch pan so that I can catch whatever comes out of there. Let's try this again. See, it's loose. Keep turning it. And until it starts pouring out. Good thing is that you gotta give it a few turns so it can start pouring out, which gives you time to adjust. Alright, perfect. So I'm gonna show you how it looks now. See, now that I loosened it, you get a little drain, which is good. I don't want it to drain too fast. You notice that it's draining very slow. So what we're gonna try to do is try to open the radiator cap. We open the radiator cap and it should flow quicker. So here's the radiator cap. Just try to make sure you open it slowly. Now that you do that, now it's flowing pretty quick, which is what we wanted. We have animals, you don't want them near this. This is sweet, they'll try to drink it and it'll really harm the animal pretty bad. You store it away from animals. I'm gonna let this drain. Once it's completely drained, we'll get back to this. And this is the coolant that I'm gonna be using to replace it. That's the Honda antifreeze type 2. Most of it is drained from Reservoir. Now we just have a drip, so I'm gonna close this and just do it hand tight. It's not gonna be tight. Oh, like you don't want to go crazy tight with this. It's just like hand tight. That's it. Not too strong because this is plastic. You don't want to break it either. So this is all the coolant that I got out of the radiator. In order for me to get to the reservoir, I actually gotta see, as you can tell, the reservoir is actually under your battery. So I'll probably gotta take the battery out and all this out, just take the reservoir out. And because I change this every like 50,000 miles, I'm not too concerned about the reservoir. I'm gonna top it off if I need to for it, and just in case. It's really hard to tell with this design, but all the way down there in the bottom of the reservoir, there should be a minimum and a maximum line. You should be able to see it from up here, but you probably need a light to flash down there, and even with that, it's hard to see. All the coolant that I took out of the reservoir, fitting in a 1 gallon jug, and just to be so that you're aware when you're buying yours, see, it's basically to the top. So 1 gallon full of coolant I drained out, and that's not including the reservoir. So I'm going to connect this attachment. So what it does is basically seals this area so you don't get spills, and you can attach the funnel to the top. It's sturdy, it doesn't move anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere. I'm going to pour in about 1 gallon of coolant. The air pockets are coming back up as the coolant is replacing that space down there. That's all the coolant that I have in this 1 gallon jug. Alright, so as you can tell, this coolant's still sitting on the funnel. So what I'm gonna do next is something that you can do is you can grab like one of the coolant hoses like this one and kind of like squeeze it to release air pockets from in there. As you squeeze that air, it releases air pockets, and you see some of the bubbles come out. So whenever you find a coolant hose, you do the same thing. You can squeeze it, and then it releases all the air bubbles. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run the car. So I'm inside the car. I'm gonna put the key in. Now I'm running the car. What you want to do is you want to run your heating on high, and what you're trying to do is basically let all that coolant recirculate. Let's go to the front. Now in the front, you notice that now, because the coolant is kind of like starting to recirculate, you see bubbles coming back up again. So I'm gonna let it heat up a little bit. When the car heats up, the thermostat is going to open up, and then eventually it's going to let all that air come out. So you're just splashing air bubbles up, and that's what we want. We want this coolant to take up the space that is inside the engine. Well, not just in the engine, but in the system where the coolant is. The air pockets that are in there, all of them are going to be replaced, or most of them are going to be replaced during this process. And as you can tell, the coolant is going further down little by little as that coolant recirculates. You just wait a little bit until you get no more air bubbles coming out. Once that is done, you turn off your car and you can take it for a ride. Take that for a ride, put your heating on, make sure it's hot. Alright, so I'm done with this. There's no more bubbles coming up, so I'm going to take this plug. I'm going to plug this in so that fluid doesn't spill out. So I'm going to open the reservoir. Kind of like a little extension. That is what I'm going to use for the reservoir. Put that in there. And put the extension in the reservoir and remove this. So now I'm going to remove this. This is the radiator cap that comes with the car. There it is. I'm gonna put the cap back on the reservoir. Make sure you look at that reservoir. Top it off if you need to. But for now, this is done. This coolant is very hot after you dry the car. You have to let it cool down. Other than that, I hope you enjoy this video. Take care.